Hello explorers, and welcome to another video. And today I'm gonna talk a little bit about a side project that I have that I thought would be funny to implement and try some techniques out that I've done before, but yeah, I wanted to do it in a little bit larger scale but still run quick and dirty, so I will get the functionality that I need and not spend too much time. And what I wanted to do is as easy as I wanted to have something where I could keep my decks in Hearthstone on my disk and work with them outside of the game. And in order to do that, I needed the cards. So the first thing I do in all of these projects is that I go out to Google and search for different resources that could help me develop this project. So I found this resource called hearthstoneapi.com, which has all the cards, and they are willing to update all the card data for every iteration and release of Hearthstone. And so I thought that would be a great resource to use as my starting point so I get cards into my database. And also they actually had all their data at Mashape. So in order to get the data, I had to create an account at Mashape, and then you get an API key and you could load the data from there. So let's start with the prerequisites for this project. I wanted to do something local, easy, so I just installed the JSON server from npm. So this call here, install -g JSON server, is all that you need to get JSON server, and then you run that against your database db.json. And my database start off quite easy, so let's go over to the code window here, and my example file here. This is everything I need to have in my database. I say there is an endpoint called cards, and in that endpoint I will put some cards. So I just say an empty list of cards is what I start up with. And that's everything I have to get going with that. And then I'm using Polymer. So here you have a lot of different things that you need to use in order to run and work with the Polymer application. In my case, I just need this command, Polymer serve. So I run that as well on my source directory, and it will serve my application up. So this little repository is on my GitHub. It's open, so you can download it if you like. And let's look at the final project, the final product. So this is what I created. I spent about 2 hours on it or something, perhaps 3. And what I wanted to do with this interface is make something easy where I can load all the cards in the deck like this, and I could see which card is owned by me. And you can actually own 2 versions of the same card, so I wanted to depict that as well. So in this case I actually own the Ancestral Healing, 2 instances of that, and Innervate I own 2 instances of that too. And in this interface I had enter, so you can give it the mass ape key, click update cards, and that's the command that will download all the cards and put them into your database. Load card is just to show the list again if you want to reload this current list that you are viewing at the moment. And then I also added some drop downs, so I can select Druid, for instance. Then I will see all the Druid cards. I could select cost 3, then I would see all the cost 3 cards. And as you see here, I haven't clicked the cost 3 cards yet. I've clicked the cost 0 and cost 1 just to get a feel of how good this interface is at actually clicking the cards. And then I can actually, if I empty these and look at all the cards that I own 2 instances of, and all the cards I own at least 1 instance of. So here I will see all the cards in my deck that I've clicked already. So this is the small GUI that I built, and it's very quick and dirty. No really design thought into it. I just wanted something that I could work with fast and make my work easier for me. So as I add functionality to this interface, I will add more bells and whistles to it as well. And I have actually one more feature in this interface, and that's mouse pointer. Here I am. So I can actually open and close the different information that is in this database, and there's quite a lot of information that you can use in order to show your cards. So that's pretty much all that I wanted to show you with this interface. So let's go over to the code again. So this is a database JSON. It's a lot of information. And then we go to the code that is actually using this. First off, we start off with the index HTML. It's something created by Polymer, so I haven't done that many things here. I have added some information about the little, so you get the icon up in the toolbar. I've added a title and some description, and I also have added some standard padding and width to the HTML and body, so they will show up a little bit nicer in the interface. So the main application is actually Hearth app, and in this application I have some imports, and this is a list that I will fill in all after I get more things that this interface will rely on or depend on. And I also depend on my Hearth card, which is another small little piece that I've built, a component that will actually handle each of these separate cards in the interface. And then we have some styling here, nothing imported, some flex layout. I added some styling to make the drop downs a bit smaller and get some border radius and on those and so on, so they looked a little bit nicer. Then I have 3 different Iron IX, and this is just to keep it very simple. I wanted to have one IX endpoint where I could call for the cards from the Mashape API, and I wanted a backend call where I could do all the gets and all the get information and different queries. And then I have an update command, so I separate where I send my updates and where I get my information. So those are the endpoints I use at the moment. And here we have the input for the Mashape key. We have 2 buttons, as we saw in the interface. I use the paper drop-down menu light. It's a little bit nicer to work with than the large implementation of paper drop-down menu, but they are very similar. The light version will make a little bit less HTML, and I'm not really sure if the other version has more functionality to it, but it's quite enough for me. I set a label on these, and in my case I actually tell it to not float the label, because I wanted my drop downs to be small and actually fit into the bar at the top, and if I have a float label, the layout will push them down a bit and it will look funky. And I also removed all animations because for some reason I got an error with the animations, even though I actually have looked at all the dependencies and everything should be in place. So I'm not really sure if they have anything wrong there. The error message is actually that I try to set the target on an event when I do the animation or when the animation ends. And that's not a valid command for JavaScript. You can't change an event that is sent. So I'm not really sure what they are trying to accomplish there. And then the full API list or the full list is these 5 lines. I have a list div which will fix the flex layout, and then I just have a template which will iterate over all cards and display this card component. The application down here is also small. We have IX headers, which is actually not required because I set them on my own. I have the mesh ape key, cards, player class, cost, owned, and player cards, cost, and owned are the properties for the drop downs. So those I will use later on. The cards is self-explanatory. Then I have 2 listeners. So my card implementation will not do the actual click change. It will just fire an event, and I will do the click logic in my application. That is not a good way to do composition, because you should have separation of concerns, but in my case I wanted to do something quick and dirty, so this works for me. And then I implemented an observer that will observe the values of player class, cost, and owned, and if any of those change, it will trigger. So that will do all the different changes if we move any of the drop downs. And the function down here is also very easy. I set up a get on this backend method. I set some standard parameters here. I want all the collectible, and I don't want the hero cards, so that will remove some debug cards and the actual hero cards, because they come as cards as well, and I don't want them in my collection. And then if I have a player class, I will set that, else I will keep that off my parameter list. And if I have a cost of 7, I will actually take everything greater than 7, and I will also sort these by name. And this is something that I put in just so to make the clicking easier. For if I want to click all the cost 1 cards, they actually come sorted in the list in the application, so it was easier to follow along and actually find them. And this is the logic to handle if I have 1, 2, or none of them clicked. And then I set the body, because the body is used when I patch information, so I wanted to clear that if there is any information in that already, and then I generate a request. So then we have this little function here. If I get this fire event for that the owner of 1 has changed, then I will send that information over to this owner change function, and I do the same with 2. The only difference is the actual data. And in this owner changed, I do this patch command where I send the body up and will actually set the values true and false on the backend server. And the nice thing here is that I have a JSON local DB, which is just a JSON file, and all the updates with post, push, post or patch or put will be done for me. Also delete will work fine, and I'm not gonna think about the backend stuff. I just build the front end logic and I get all the backend for free. And the update cards, I just set the header of mesh key and send that off, and it will fetch all the cards for me. Load cards, as I said before, I get all the collectibles and not hero cards, so that's an empty API call, so it might not be required anymore, but I had the button from the start because I didn't have all the drop downs. So I wanted to load all the cards and just see what I got during development. And on card update response is actually when I get the response back from the call to Mashape, I want to handle that response and post it into my collection. So this is where I post all the different objects or all the different cards into my database. And then I have some small debug information here. All errors are handled by console logging them. So if I get an error, I will see it in the log when I develop things. And the card response is just to see that when I post something into the database, it will actually log card response for that post. So during the update cycle, I can see when it writes down all the cards, and when it writes 5,000 cards, it's good to see that value updates, so you see how much of the data has actually been downloaded. In the future, I might do some progress bar or something just to handle that a little bit nicer. And let's go over and look at the card. It's quite easy here. Also some small CSS to decide how large the image should be and how this box card content should look. I add the two checkboxes on top with the values from the item check 1 and check 2. Then I have this Papyrus details, which is a third-party component, which just shows a summary and an open link, and then the paragraph after that is the actual content that is hidden and will be opened and shown in this Papyrus details. So I thought that was a very small, easy component to add just for this functionality, so I didn't bother writing that on my own. I just added it because that functionality is something that I'm not sure that is required at the moment. If I in the future want to take this information and make a nicer display of it, might look into that. Then I will remove this component, obviously. I think if you have a GUI where you can click on the image and then get this information in some nice table or something, perhaps, but I haven't seen any use for that yet. And down here we have a few small functions. I wanted to check if the URL is actually present, and if the URL isn't present, I will give it a missing image, which is just a black image, so I will fill the spot and not get an ugly image. And change zone 1 and 2 is just setting the ID of the current target and the value of the checkbox, and firing an event, which I will catch on the other end. So I will fire the event up from the card out to the application. And mechanics is actually an object or a list of objects with different mechanics, and it's a name in that, so I can print these with, let's say, taunt, comma, stealth or something. So that's just to get all the data out from the database. So this is how far I've come so far in this deck building app. And it's as I said, I haven't put too much effort into it, but I think I have actually arrived at a point where I can click cards easily and actually build that first data point of which card do I own. And in the future I'm looking into creating functions that perhaps could build a deck for me with a good mix of cards, or perhaps which decks could I use of the decks that are out there, and so on. Because, well, I like to play the game. Building decks could be fun sometimes, but as a programmer, I think it's much more satisfying to actually build something that could create something for me. I would rather put some effort into building something that could build something for me than to build it myself. So this is just a labor of love for me, and I hope you found this little review of my code interesting, and I really looking forward to your comments. Please leave a comment and tell me what you think I should do with this application, if you think it's something worthwhile doing. And I hope you learned something today, and I hope to see you in the next video.